Mushroom soup is a great example of how a seemingly simple dish can be anywhere from horrible goop to an exquisite comfort food enchanted by the dewy mist of the forest floor. However, unless you happen to be in an area where you can gather wild mushrooms and they're in season, your only options will be dried or frozen mushrooms. But don't despair, because dried mushrooms can be coaxed into producing extremely good flavor, which is what I'm showing you here.
These are the fundamental elements of this recipe. There's going to be a few other things added, as you see in the ingredients list at the beginning, but these are the core ingredients. We've got 15 grams of dried porcini mushrooms, about 150 grams of fresh mushrooms, about 30 grams of shallots that will be cut up and diced coarsely in a few minutes. One of the things people ask me is, how do I remember so many different recipes? One way is you remember the ratio of ingredients. 15 grams to 150 grams. We've got 10 times as much fresh mushrooms as dried mushrooms. 30 grams, twice as much by weight as the dried mushrooms. The dried mushrooms are going to have 300 milliliters of very hot water poured over them, which is 20 times their weight. 20 times 15 is 300. Now, one other thing, I'm going to pull 2 mushrooms out of this, and these are going to be done separately. These are going to be reserved for something else. You'll see in a few minutes here. But the rest of these are going to get cut up and cooked in butter just now. Into a 4-liter stock pot, I've put 45 grams of butter. Let this foam up first. And when the butter is ready, we add the mushrooms. That's all of them except those 2 that I kept in reserve. The heat's on about 7, medium-high, 1 out of 10, and I'm going to stir this for a few minutes. We want to get some color on those mushrooms. Mushrooms are still cooking. They're not browned yet. We need to actually brown them. And back here on the cutting board, I've got the shallots that have been roughly chopped now. Don't cut them too small. Those 22 grams of black olives, the dried thyme, fresh dill, the 2 mushrooms we kept aside, and this is the porcini that are now still rehydrating. They'll rehydrate more as you cook them in the soup. And I've also got some duck stock that I made yesterday. It's been about 2 minutes now with the since I added the shallots. Now I'm going to add 3 whole cloves of garlic. I'm not chopping this up first. You don't have to add it at all, because you don't want to make this overpowered by garlic. But if you don't chop it up first, leave the cloves in whole, let them roast, and then boil in the butter. They won't be too strong. You'll just get that pleasant kind of golden garlic taste in the background. So don't cut them up. Put them in absolutely whole. I'm going to give this just like 1 more minute here for this garlic to cook in the hot fat, and then we'll add the porcini that have been soaking in the hot water. Okay, it's been about a minute. Here's the porcini and the water they were soaking in, and the thyme. Let's take a quick knife to this dill here. It doesn't need to be finely minced because it's going to be blended later anyway. But there's the tablespoon of fresh dill. Okay. Now I'm lowering the heat a little bit. It's been on 7 this whole time. Now I'm going down to 5, to medium. We want to keep this at a slow simmer for a while. Okay, it's up to a simmer now, so I'm going to lower the heat down even more, down to about 2 here, and put a lid on it. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes now since I put the lid on it. I'm adding the black olives and 1 of those reserved mushrooms, which I just cut into quarters, just simply cut into quarters. Why I'm doing this, explained in volume 4 of my cookbook series. It's quite complicated to explain here. So we're going to cook this for about 5 more minutes, and then we'll go to the next stage. Okay, time is up. Now I'm going to add 300 mils, 300 grams really, of the duck stock. This is stir. I'm turning the heat off now. I'm just going to let this sit for just a minute before I transfer it to the blender. Yeah, this is the same pan. I just rinsed it out. Mushroom soup goes back in, and we bring it to a simmer once again. Now, while this is coming to a simmer, we're going to get our ingredients together for the end here. I have the Madeira, a little black truffle oil, real truffle oil, not the imitation stuff. That mushroom that was not used earlier, that's still coming up, and a lemon for a little bit of sourness, and the cream that'll be added at the end. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes now on that low simmer. I'm going to add cream. Now, the amount of cream you add is up to you. I'm adding rather a lot compared to what some people would add. This is about 150 mils. I'm also adding the Madeira. And now we're going to continue simmering it to reduce it down a little bit more. I also just tasted it a minute ago, and I can see it needs a little finely ground fresh black pepper. So, continue simmering it here. Okay, I'm going to add now that quarter teaspoon of dark brown sugar. Just a tiny, tiny bit. Do not overdo it. We're not making a sweet soup here. This is just some background notes in here. Now, use a spider to get out. There's the lemon peel and the bay leaf out of there. Now we've got that mushroom that we reserved is cut with a mandolin. You can save this for garnish. You can put parts of it in now. Save a few of the nicer pieces for being right on top of the soup. We're just going to stir it like this for one more minute, and then we'll serve it. Taste it, of course, and adjust the salt in case it needs more salt.
I'm very pleased to announce the release of Volume 3, The Focus on Food Chemistry. I want to clear up a few things about these 3 volumes. First, they all contain completely different information. There's no duplication, they're not revisions. When I wrote Volume 1, I had 2.5 years of YouTube videos to cover. People had been asking me for the printed list of ingredients for all of those dishes, and so I obliged. There are recipes with stepwise directions and many tips offered throughout, as well as an extensive history of Russian cuisine over the last 1,000 years, but Volume 1 is very different from Volume 2 and 3. In Volumes 2 and 3, I only had about 9 months of YouTube recipes to cover in each, so I was able to provide stepwise directions for everything. In Volume 2, I included a lot of additional information about cooking and some simple examples of flavor chemistry to set the stage for Volume 3. While Volume 2 hopefully got you thinking about some of the processes that go on in cooking and how flavors are expressed and sensed at the molecular level, the topic was painted with pretty broad strokes to make it easy to digest. Pun intended. Volume 3 is a milestone in the series, in which I have included an entire introductory course in food chemistry, which is why Volume 3 is about 70 pages longer than Volume 2. If you just want the recipes, that's okay too. You don't have to read the first few chapters. But if you've ever been curious about what influences tastes and flavors and the rationale for deciding cooking times and temperatures and why things taste different when they're combined in different ways, this book will answer many of those questions. It also paves the way for Volume 4, which will be next year. I'm pleased to announce a new, completely different type of cookbook. If you watch my channel regularly, you know that the recipes I present are usually centered on meat or seafood and seldom vegetarian dishes. This new book is a departure from that norm. Only vegetables, fruits, eggs, and dairy are used in dozens of recipes here. The key here is that these recipes don't taste like typical vegetarian food. This isn't a bunch of salads and bean sprouts wrapped in pita bread. These are completely satisfying, hearty dishes that use the science of food chemistry to produce meat-like aromas and flavors. But don't worry, there's no weird chemicals involved, just ordinary foods and spices that you can get in any grocery store. This really is an entirely new approach. These are flavorful, filling meals produced by a distinctive cooking method and unexpected combinations of ingredients. Once you see how it's done and understand the method, you can apply these preparations to some of your own recipes and transform them into vegetarian dishes too.
Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.
If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link.